Alright, so I'm just running through a lot of my customs that I've either posted on Instagram or that I've been doing this year. Um, I like the idea of doing videos, it gives me a chance to actually talk about things I've done to my figures or things I like about certain figures. So this video will be about obviously the Deadpool Wolverine. Now, I did a lot of modifications to mine. These arms are not the first iteration I've used. I did do the original Marvel Legends arm swap with the MCU Wolverine that had no jacket, so he had the sleeveless arms. It's hard to find a method to get that peg to go into the shoulder. So online, I'm sure all of you guys can find them. They've got these arms that peg right into there perfectly, just like the Marvel Legends version. They're relatively cheap. I don't know if you can find them anymore. They were pretty easy for me to get. I'm not good at keeping names of the creators. So whoever created these arms, shout out to you. They are pretty good. There are a few things that kind of have like a setback with them. They're very tight when you want to rotate the shoulders. You hear the clicking. So normally I don't mind that, but it just kind of makes it not that smooth, like you're used to with Marvel Legends. And the other thing is the actual butterfly movement inside there is still a little loose. It's not. It feels like it can fall, like very easily. So I don't know. Maybe I can find a way to get something in there to create some friction. But I actually replaced the black socket that was in there with just a cloth, piece of cloth, black cloth. And that helps, nothing's hindering this movement, and the cloth. This is as far as you go naturally, even if you had the stock Marvel Legends arms on there. So I might pop these out, Dremel inside the armpit, and just, maybe. I don't know. I don't like going too far with customs, especially if like I get to a point where I'm comfortable and where I like it. So with this guy, let's talk about it. I went to town on this guy, man, and I absolutely love this figure. Now, I do wish they would upgrade the torso. This crunch idea, it's outdated. It's not the best anymore. I modified mine where I trimmed the upper ribs and then I trimmed some of the lower part so that he can crunch just a little bit lower. Okay, like that's the stock, and then that was where I can get him as low as I can get him. That's comparable to the Captain America mod I did. So, not the best, in terms of getting him to go all the way down, but he never, never really needs to crunch in when he's wearing this kind of suit, I guess. Hugh Jackman never really did it, but he did get pretty low. So, I just like all figures that are like brawlers to be able to reach that, that deep crunch. So it just makes them look like they're gonna spring right at you. Now, I wish that can go farther, but I shaved the upper hips inside there so that the legs raise higher. I also lowered the belt. Sorry, I'm not good at doing the whole focusing and making sure the camera sees what it's supposed to see. So bear with me, new at this. So I lowered the belt, glued it in place, and then trimmed it just a little bit right there where it kind of protrudes up and then goes out. So I trimmed that to just keep the waist low. And then the thing I did about mine, now I don't know if you can tell if you have a good eye, the paint job is horrible. Horrible. I apologize. This is not my best work. But again, when I get to a point where I'm comfortable, I'll leave it, you know. But I sanded down the ribs and then sculpted a more protruding rib cage so that it creates that V effect, tapering down to the waist. Because before it was like he was like a sausage, just straight. It was just straight. There was barely a little gap right here, which is what I like. I like that for my superheroes and action figures to have the V cut, and it helps the overall proportion. Like that looks like not some dude wearing a costume, but some dude ready to go to business. Now, the other thing I've done, obviously I swapped the head. I modified the neck so that he can look up a little better. It's not the best, but But the biggest thing that I did, other than the sculpted ribs, are the boot cuts. Now, if you get the Deadpool Wolverine bar scene Wolverine, where he's in his khakis and his, just street gear, well, he wears his blue shoes under the pants, if you notice. I mean, it's pretty obvious. But the ankle, that's the important part. So if you get that figure and no one really cares about it, let's be honest, heat it up, pop those ankles out, okay, with the shoes, and or if you like the style of the shoes that came on this figure, because they are different. They're two different, for some reason, mildly sculpted in different paint. But you can choose between which shoes you like best. But it's the ankle, really. So that ankle is what you want to pop out. Okay? And then with the figure, I cut the whole ankle off. Okay? Right? You can see the cut line, obviously. And then Dremel up. And then pop this thing right in. And ever since doing that, it matches. I've posed this guy around so much. I tried painting that hinge black so that it's, a continuous black stripe, but because of me posing him around, when you've got this ankle swivel, he hits a lot of poses, especially those like classic Wolverine poses where you can, swivel out the leg, like this, and then like that, Now, if he had toe hinges, obviously you don't have to swivel out, but for Spider-Man, mostly when he has that boot cut, I pivot out the leg and then rotate the boot cut down, so naturally the foot would be like this if it's a normal ankle that Marvel Legend does, but because of that swivel, he can then do the Spider-Man. But I mostly do it because Wolverine does low crouching poses, and it's meant to be, a feral stance. So, very animalistic, and you can't just be stagnant in your poses with Wolverine. Because of those ankle pivots, I can get him doing a lot. And he holds, it holds. I did the same thing for this Wolverine. Painted him up, swapped the arms, except I used the arms of some classified G.I. Joe villain. One of those twin brothers. Sorry, I'm not a Joe fan. I just like the figures and some of the characters. But with this guy, you can do the exact same mod, except you've got to paint, obviously brown, which is not hard. That was an actual... After I did this figure, I knew that I was going to go back and do John Byrne style. Yeah, so I mean, I did the exact same stuff with this one as well. I shaved the ribs, sculpted them, everything. I did all the exact same stuff, except I just gave him a different paint and a red belt. That red belt really kind of changes. I thought about giving this guy a red belt, but no. You don't mess with what already works. So, just wanted to give you my Wolverine for the MCU. Again, I'm very excited. Can't wait for Gambit. I've got my Channing Tatum head sculpt coming in the mail, so I'll be painting that up. I do have a body for it, but it doesn't have like texture or sculpt on it. It's just a basic comic style body, but I'm just too eager to get that one in hand. I know Hasbro's gonna pop that one out pretty soon. I think Gambit's gonna be a heavy feature in Doomsday, and so that's gonna be perfect timing to get a Channing Tatum Gambit. I was a really big fan once I heard that Channing Tatum was gonna be Gambit, and I know a lot of people that's not their choice, but for now he is a good choice, especially with his passion behind the character. So I'm very excited to get that. Can't wait to paint up the head sculpt and find a body if the comic accurate body doesn't really work out. I don't really want to do sculpting because I'm not that good, but I'll find a body that works. Might do something like what I did with my Daredevil and use the Spider-Man Game Reverse torso and find some different upper torso that matches Gambit. If Hasbro does not pop that figure out within the next, possible year. I don't want to wait for this movie to come out and not have an MCU Gambit. Like, I have a feeling he's going to be a big part of that movie. So, I'm like I said, I'm very excited. He's my favorite character. I'm looking forward to doing a video to display that. I've already showed off my custom Gambit, which is, my pride and joy so far this year. I could not be happier with the way that one turned out. But again, I'm looking forward to the MCU Gambit. It's just time for Gambit to get his dues. All right, y'all. I'm out.